All right, and welcome to our Sunday drop. I hope you guys had a chance to check out our drop from yesterday. We only did one yesterday with the NASCAR, Steve Wilson, editor in chief of SpeedwayDigest.com, out in Vegas. Broke down the O'Reilly Auto Parts race. Of course, Kyle Larson wins out there in Vegas. He's also a favorite for Vegas today. The Indy car is going on right now out in the streets of Arlington, Texas. It's pretty cool going actually past the Dallas Cowboy Stadium. First time they've ever had a street course out there. So that's going on. We'll be talking about that later on this week. But now is the time. We are getting ready to start our NFL draft preview. We've got our big board up here, and we have got Adam Jividen, super Browns fan, super Buckeyes fan, super Cavs fan, Super Guardians fan, great prognosticator, great dad, our partner in crime, and he's just earned all kinds of acclimates over the last few years. So we're going to be doing this in different parts, in different chapters, if you will, each and every week, and we're all gearing up toward the draft. So we're going to jump right into it here, and we're going to start talking about quarterbacks, defensive ends, and edges. Adam, how are you doing, sir? You ready? You ready to get this going?
You bet, man. We spent a not small amount of time looking at different prospects. I think the thing is that, and this is one thing that I like to mention, kind of for those listening at home, is that this isn't based strictly off of or combine results. It's not just based off of tape. It's kind of a combination of the two, and in some cases, especially like with a lot of the players, corners and wide receivers. There are some that haven't run yet, and so you kind of just have to go off of what their tape is. Obviously, as a corner or a wide receiver, other than running a 4.4 or a 4, like high 4.4 and a 4.6, could mean you cannot separate at the next level, or you can't cover
Right.
at the next level.
Right.
So as results for pro days start to come in, this could change a little bit. Those two positions, wide receivers is more or less, I think, fairly set unless somebody runs really poorly. But the corner position, really, after the first one, as well as the safety position, after that initial player who is very highly rated, there's a lot of fluidity there. So as again, some of these pro day results start to come in for the guys that didn't run, if they run really poorly, that could impact their rating on the big board, as it should for NFL teams as well.
Absolutely, and each week as we get together and we go through these groupings, we'll make any adjustments to that as possible. Well, we're going to jump right into the quarterbacks. Obviously, no secret here. Our very top of the leaderboard is Fernando Mendoza from Indiana University. My alumni, proud to say that he was went to IU and part of that national championship that we got. What an amazing time that was. But I tell you what, he really had just a major rise. Originally a 3-year recruit, Cal Mendoza transferred to Indiana for the 2025 season and delivered a season of the ages, Adam. I mean, and I know I'm biased, but you don't even have to be an IU fan to understand it. Early on in the season, you were talking about Fernando Mendoza. He won
I
the
started
Heisman.
before the season.
Yes,
Before
you
the
did.
season started,
Yes, you did.
I want my flowers for the Mendoza pick. I'm just
You
saying.
got it. You got it. And I mean, you caught a lot of it. I mean, he won the Heisman Trophy, the Maxwell Award, the Walter Camp Award, while leading Indiana to its first ever national championship with a perfect season. Very elite stats. In 2025, he threw for 3,535 yards, 41 touchdowns, and only 6 interceptions, and his 90.3 QBR ranked number one in the nation. Obviously, we expect him to go first off the board, number one overall pick, being picked by the Raiders. He's certainly, we feel like that's the direction that's go, and I don't see anything that's going to change that at all. I
Nope.
mean, the Raiders have made some moves to clearly free up cap space so they can sign Mendoza to a nice contract. And one might think that he's going to be out there in Vegas for years to come. Let's get your thoughts on Fernando Mendoza.
Yeah, I mean he's going number one. A lot of the moves that they're making, I don't know that it's necessarily to free up cap space. The Raiders actually ended the offseason with a ton of cap space. I think the moves that they are making
Okay.
rather is like the Max Crosby trade. They were trying to trade up to get additional assets because again, when you're running on a rookie quarterback, it's best to try to pair him with as many rookie contracts as possible, players that are aligned to that same time frame. Personally, when they made the deal that ultimately the Ravens backed out of, um, as soon as I saw that, because they would have been picking 13, I know for some folks they would say it's an overdraft, but I think that the Raiders' plan may have been to either go get an offensive lineman or bring in Mendoza's old buddy, Omar Cooper, to give Mendoza a target that he's already familiar with because the Raiders also don't have a number one receiver. They traded Jacoby Myers to their number one receiver to the Jaguars. So I think it would have made sense. Now that's obviously not the case. If they want to go get Omar Cooper, they will instead have to give up assets to move up. But I think it's yeah, Mendoza's a lock. Like this isn't even a question. Frankly, whoever was going to pick number one, Mendoza was going to be a lock.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because not only is he a better like a good example of what was happening or transpiring early in the season is people were saying, well, what if the Titans land the number one pick overall and they have Cam Ward? What would you do? And I said I would trade Cam Ward and draft Fernando Mendoza. I think he's a better prospect. I like Mendoza a lot. I see a lot of from an NFL comparison. It's been listed kind of all season. There's a lot of Jared Goff in Fernando Mendoza, besides the fact that they both went to Cal for a chunk of their career. I think the thing about Goff coming in is Goff had really good arm talent. It doesn't always show up the way he can when he with the things that he can do. I will say I think Mendoza's a little more ahead of Goff. Goff had a slightly bigger arm. I like the way that Mendoza processes, and that's the biggest thing. That as we're looking at a quarterback, if a quarterback can have all of the tools but doesn't have the brain to go with it, it's not going to matter. I think a good example of that is another quarterback in this draft class. Drew Aller has all the physical tools to be a successful quarterback, but that dude could not process a defense and understand where the defense is supposed to be to save his life.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so I just go Mendoza's a lock. He's going to be with the Raiders for a
Yeah.
long time. And I think he could be a driver for kind of the Raiders as we're seeing some of the other quarterbacks in their division also take steps forward. Everybody's going to be jostling for position of who is going to be the next team in the AFC West as Patrick Mahomes starts to get older.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, not a lot to talk about with Fernando Mendoza. It's a solid lock in. Let's move on to Ty Simpson of Alabama. I mean, he's really a balanced prospect, no pun intended. But scouts categorize him as a balanced archetype with significant physical potential with a high developmental risk. In 2025, following Jalen Milroe's departure, Simpson took over as the starter in 2025, throwing for 3,567 yards and 28 touchdowns. Here's what we look for him to do in the draft, and you certainly can feel free to adjust this as well, Adam. But he's generally viewed as a second-tier prospect behind Mendoza, often projected as a round two or a developmental type of gamble. So again, what are your thoughts on Ty Simpson out of Alabama?
Simpson has some great tape, and then Simpson looks like garbage in other games. The challenge with Simpson, and this is where it's like, okay, is this media spin? Is this agent spin? And we will never know, at least on our side, we don't get medicals. Is people are going, well, Simpson had an injury to, I believe, his hamstring on his plant leg halfway through the season, and that's when he started to decline. And you're going, okay, then why did nobody hear about this during the season? Like, not a soul. So we don't know if that's legit, if it's not. Half the season, Ty Simpson looked like he could go top five. And the other half of the season, he looked like he should go in the third round. It was almost like Ty Simpson's season was kind of like our team here in Indianapolis, where the Colts looked amazing the first half and like hot garbage water in the second half.
Yes.
But I go, that's the challenge. Do I think Simpson is a second tier prospect behind Mendoza? Yes, I do. I don't believe he's not a can't miss.
So
I
do we?
don't think he's going to go in the second round, though. I think he strikes me as a late first round where they jump up to draft him from the end of the second round because they can get that fifth-year option if Simpson develops well.
So where do you think he'll land?
I haven't shaken out my mock draft. He's one of the hardest prospects to figure out. Honestly, he could land, and this is what's tough, is there are some analysts that rave about this dude because they look at those first like 6 games. And I'm like, but what about the other ones?
So and we'll be doing a whole mock draft too, and as we get closer. So
I mean, I could see him as early as a team in the high teens. I could see him to the Browns in the 20s with that pick that we got from the Travis Hunter trade. I could see again a team from the back half of the second round jump up to try to get him like the Lamar Jackson draft slot at like 28, 29. I think that late 28, 29 makes the most sense.
All right, let's talk about Carson Beck out of Miami, ex-Georgia player. The transfer turnaround after an inconsistent 2024 season at Georgia, where his draft stock really fell a lot. Beck transferred to Miami for a reported $4 million in NIL package. Don't get me started on that. But 2025, he kind of reinvented himself at Miami, throwing for 3,813 yards and 30 touchdowns in 2025, re-entering the conversation as a potential top 10 draft pick. You know, the scouts are saying that he possesses the prototypical NFL size, around 6'4", 220 pounds, and elite arm strength. Though a lot of critics still question his mobility as a pocket passer and his dependency on that. So we'll see how where he goes at, if he is in fact raised his stock to a top 10, but we will see. Carson Beck, what are your thoughts?
Okay, before we delve into Carson Beck, I want to say these next 3 guys, Carson Beck, Cade Klubnik, Garrett Nussmeier, are all dependent. Their entire career is going to be dependent on what kind of franchise do they go to.
Yes.
This isn't Fernando Mendoza where I feel like Fernando Mendoza is like a plug and play. You could put him in almost any system, maybe not the Jets because the Jets are a dumpster fire, but he could go to almost any system and turn and be a step forward for the franchise. Ty Simpson, it's a question. Carson Beck, it's an even greater question. And the same with Klubnik and Nussmeier. Could they develop into eventual NFL starters? Sure. Could they just become career backups? Absolutely. And get like 3-4 seasons in the NFL and then go off and sell like as a financial advisor or something like that. That's what a lot of those guys do, right? So I think all 3 of them are really lumped together, and it's what teams are looking for. I'm kind of splitting hairs between the 3. So for me, it's almost like 3, 4, 5 is the same, very, very, very similar grade. Carson Beck struggles from a mobility perspective, as you mentioned. He not only he's starting to pick up. He displayed, especially in the Ohio State and Indiana games, better pocket presence. But in the NFL, he's not going to get long because he's a long strider. It takes him a little while to get moving. And so he's going to have to feel the pocket and manage the pocket better as opposed to trying to get out and scramble to pick up 8 to 10 yards because he kind of looks like a baby giraffe out there when he's just running, like limbs going everywhere, right? The other struggle that Carson Beck has is when Carson Beck looks good, holy cow, he looks good.
Yeah.
But when he looks bad, he'll throw 5 picks in a game, 3 picks in a game. And so if good Carson can be seen more often, and not even saying become good Carson all the time. He's not going to do that as a rookie. He's not going to do that as a second-year quarterback. But minimize the amount of bad Carson Beck, he could genuinely become a viable mid-tier starter in the NFL.
Okay, I thought you were going to say something else. Yeah,
Nope,
you're
we're
right.
good
You're
on
right.
Carson
You're
Beck.
absolutely right. Well, let's move on to Kay Klubnik out of Clemson. I mean, his career has kind of been a roller coaster. He had a masterpiece 2024 season, 3,639 yards, 36 touchdowns. He leading Clemson to the college football playoffs, but struggled significantly in 2025 with career low 16 touchdowns. The scouts appreciate his accuracy and efficient passing style, though he lacks the elite arm streak of others in his class. And, kind of going back to what you just said, despite his 2025 struggles, some analysts like Mel Kiper, for example, previously ranked him in the top 4 quarterback class based on this 2024 ceiling. So, like you said, it just kind of depends on where he's at on the board when it comes around to him and where he lands at. And we'll have all that put together for our mock draft. What are your thoughts about Cade Klubnik?
Do you want to know who I think Cade Klubnik is? Cade Klubnik is a more athletic coming out of college Kirk Cousins.
Mm-hmm.
Cade Klubnik had a tremendous 2024 season. The Clemson team, tons of hype. They were coming in as a top 10 program into the season, and they were built on basically 4 or 5 major stars. It was Klubnik, their 3 studs on defense, Peter Woods, TJ Parker, and Avion Terrell. And they had, I believe his name is EJ Williams. He got hurt at the beginning of the season. Clemson was terrible. I kind of wrote him off. Clemson's entire offensive attack was based on one receiver that was any good. The number of times that Klubnik would throw a ball that should have been catchable, the receivers didn't catch it, or they dropped it, or they ran the wrong route, or his offensive line couldn't block. I'm watching this. I watched them several times, and you're going, it looks like a high school team, and that it's built on a star quarterback, and there should have been one good receiver. In college football today, you can't win with just one good receiver. It doesn't work. I mean, Ohio State had Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, and we lost to Miami in the playoff. You can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those scenarios where Cade Klubnik is honestly the hardest of all of these quarterbacks to evaluate. But if you get down to, let's kind of take some good moments from 2025 and have them be what they are. Acknowledge what 2025 actually was when it came to the negatives. But to the point that you made with Mel Kiper is what he said is, let's look at the 2024 tape. And I think that's actually more realistic to who he could be.
Right.
Which is why I said he's like a more athletic Kirk Cousins. Doesn't have a huge arm, but man, can he be accurate. He can put it in a small window, and he can get out and move. That was one of the things that Cousins really has never been able to do. But if you think about Kirk Cousins coming out of Michigan State years ago, didn't have a big arm. Smart quarterback. I think Klubnik's a smart quarterback, but Dabo Swinney failed Cade Klubnik. That kid was a can't miss prospect coming out of high school, and he might get drafted in the 4th round. But a team like I hate to say it, but our buddy Kyle would love it. A team like the Steelers, or a team, the team that honestly I think would be an amazing fit for Cade Klubnik would be the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah.
Let him sit for a year behind Matt Stafford and what's probably going to be Matt Stafford's last season, maybe 2, and then let's see what the kid can do. I think there's a lot more meat on the bone if he can get to a team that has a good quarterback coach developing behind him. I think he's the one that we could look at as that Russell Wilson prospect who goes in round 4, round 5. And then has a 16-year career with some Pro Bowl games. It's just, I think I like him a lot. I just think he got the rawest of raw deals from where he went to school, if I'm going to be honest.
And you're absolutely right. And we'll see this is Klubnik is an interesting dynamic as to he could just, as you mentioned, he'd do well holding the clipboard for a little bit before jumping right into it. Let's move into our last quarterback as far as our groupings go, is what we're talking about before we move over to the defensive side. Let's talk about Garrett Nussmeier out of LSU. A lot of people call him the gunslinger, known for his high upside arm talent and a gunslinger mentality. He famously set the LSU record for the most passing yards in the first career start, 395 yards in the 2024 Real Quest Bowl. A lot of people are worried about injury with him, and in 2025 senior season was cut short by 9 games due to a torso and abdominal injuries. The 2024 production in his full 24 season, he threw for 4,052 yards, something like that, second most in the LS history, just behind Joe Burrow, and 29 touchdowns. I think he's a polarizing draft prospect, Adam. Some see he has round one talent and could leapfrog Ty Simpson, while others fear his injury history and lack of rushing utility could hurt his draft stock. Or what are your
Yep.
thoughts on Garrett Nussmeier?
Nussmeier is interesting. Again, all the arm talent in the world. He also does process very well, and he's a high character kid. His dad, Doug Nussmeier, is the offensive coordinator for the New Orleans Saints.
Right.
So he has grown up in an NFL environment his entire life. So he should know what to do and what it's going to take when he gets there. Again, my struggle with him, as you mentioned, is he's not mobile and he's had injury issues. He is I don't want to say he's a statue. Like, we're not talking like the Dan Marino days where Marino would move like 6 inches, right? But he's if Klubnik was the more athletic version of Kirk Cousins, Garrett Nussmeier is maybe Kirk Cousins with a little bit of a better, stronger arm. I just and I think the thing is that we're seeing in today's NFL, given how good the defensive linemen are, if you can't manipulate the pocket, move, and be able to get out, you're not going to last. And that's where I think if Nussmeier he tries to hang in the pocket and deliver the hero throw too often. And so, again, I look at him as a guy that I don't know that he can be a viable starter in the NFL. I think the one that has the highest potential to start, if he lands in the right situation, would be Klubnik. But again, there's also, because you go, is he too broken? Because I think he got horrible coaching at Clemson.
Yeah, I agree.
I think Nussmeier has a chance to be one of those guys. Think of like a Gardner Minshew or Fitzpatrick, where they would come in and they could be really good for small stretch. So like a high level backup. Similar to what we saw of Jacoby Brissett, could maybe fill in for a season, but isn't going to be a guy you can build a franchise around. That's what I see out of Garrett Nussmeier.
All right, Adam. Let's move on. We're going to move over to the defensive side of the ball. We're going to talk about defensive ends and edge. And there's a lot of people don't know, okay, what does edge mean? What's defensive end? What's the difference between defensive end? Some they got them ranked as an edge. Some people got them ranked as a defensive end. So we kind of combined that group, defensive end and edge. But Adam, go ahead and explain to everybody what edge means in our conversation today.
Yeah, I think as you're talking what's an edge player, that would be a player that's not a traditional defensive end, but still is seen as a pass rusher. The best example of that would be Micah Parsons for the Green Bay Packers, formerly of the Dallas Cowboys. Micah lines up as a linebacker. He lines up as an off-ball defensive end, meaning he could be on the outside of the defensive end. Or there are times where, like, using Micah Parsons as an example, they would line up with 3 defensive linemen, and then he would basically be able to blitz from anywhere else. TJ Watt, another player that is not a traditional defensive end, but is an edge player, still racks up a lot of sacks. If you think of TJ Watt in a traditional sense, you go, that is a dude that gets after, he's a pass rusher. He gets after the quarterback. Where this is going to come up most often is the superstar from Ohio State, Arvell Reese. So Arvell Reese does not line up a defensive end. He lines up at all over the place. And he would blitz from, the second level up with the linebackers. He blitz from the defensive line all over, but he's traditionally seen as a pass rusher.
And we will get to him in just a moment, but let's start out with David Bailey out of Texas Tech. I mean, he's the sack master. A transfer from Stanford, Bailey led the nation in sacks during 2025 season with 14.5 sacks. Elite pressure, he posted 20.2% pressure, the best in the country, and recorded 23 quarterback hits and 43 total pressures. Physical profile listed at 6'3", 250 pounds. He impressed a lot of the scouts at the NFL Combine here in Indianapolis with a 4.5 second and 40-yard dash. And a lot of people look at him currently as the number one edge rusher and the number two overall prospect on some big boards. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people trade up to get him. Then the Jets are maybe looking for something different, and they might be the ones that, so he might end up in the second round, not with the Jets, but with another team that might trade up with the Jets to get David Bailey.
Yeah. This is a lot of the top defensive players have very similar grades.
Right.
Like we're talking splitting hairs and there's really four guys.
Yes.
Four guys that distance themselves from the pack. David Bailey, Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs. Texas Tech, Ohio State, Ohio State, Ohio State. So I think, just to point out, I think David Bailey is that traditional defensive end. If you are a 4-3 organization that's maybe set at linebacker, or you prefer to have your pass rushers from that defensive line, David Bailey's your guy. I personally like Bailey as I'm evaluating a little more than I like Arvell Reese, because I think Bailey throughout the 2025 season was more consistent. Arvell Reese came out like a cannon and then had some games where he just kind of fell off and disappeared. And as an Ohio State fan, I was even going, personally, I think it would have been smart for Arvell Reese to come home, stay in Columbus one more season, and continue to develop under Matt Patricia. But David Bailey is, again, ran really well. At 6'3", he almost has a frame very, very similar to Indianapolis Colt legend, like Dwight Freeney. He kind of has a little bit of like Freeney and Mathis in him as I watch him, kind of coming off the edge with speed. Yeah. He's got some bend in him, which I really like seeing. That's where you're able to drop your hip closer to the field as you're trying to get around the edge and not lose your momentum, not lose your speed, while also had a really good showing on the bench press, showing his just core flat out strength. Bailey is one of the best quotes that I heard in regards to David Bailey was, as I look at Bailey and as I look at Arvell Reese has the potential to be the highest leverage player in this draft and be special. But that's still a couple years away. I think David Bailey could be special from day one.
Yeah.
So
and that's why
I think the ceiling is a little lower for Bailey than Arvell Reese, but I think his floor is much higher. I worry about Arvell Reese's bust potential. I think David Bailey could come in and be a potential, we're looking at, there are some studs on the defensive side of the ball. And I think he's going to be a candidate for Defensive Rookie of the Year out the gate. The way that we kind of have talked about some of the other young pass rushers, Aiden Hutchinson, who just came in year one and just almost dominated from their position. That's what I see out of David Bailey.
Oh, absolutely. And again, number one draft pick, it's just where he's going to land at. I mean, obviously not the number one overall like Fernando Mendoza, but still certainly going to be in the first round for sure. Let's talk about, again, let's expand our conversation about Arvell Rose, Ohio State. Very versatile hybrid. Scouts compare his upside much what you mentioned a while ago, Adam, to Michael Parsons due to his ability to play as an edge rusher, 299 snaps, traditional linebacker, 255 snaps, and even in the slot, 30 snaps. You know, he had a 2025 breakout. He earned All-American honors and was named the Big Ten's Butts Fitzgerald Linebacker of the Year after totaling 69 tackles, 10 TFLs, and 6.5 sacks. So the scouts say at 6'4", 243 pounds, he's noted for his fork lifting strength and elite run defense, boasting an 84.5 PFF run defense, and certainly give him a very good grade to go in the first round as well, extending our conversation with Arvell Rose from Ohio State.
Arvell Reese is oh my gosh, that kid's a monster. The thing about Arvell Reese that I look at and gives me pause, if I am going, okay, and if I'm a GM and evaluating the players again, kind of mentioned the big four, right? Bailey, Reese, Tommy Styles, Caleb Downs. The biggest concern that I have about Arvell Reese is he has by far, though, the least amount of snaps amongst those four. Now, that could mean he has a lot of places still to go to develop. My concern is, has he seen enough football in front of him to know what to do to produce as a rookie? Now, if I'm going, you know what, I'm okay with that long game, awesome. Arvell Reese very well could be your guy. If you're trying to get an impact right out the gate, make sure his role, I don't want to say is limited, but his role is very defined. That's what we saw out of that the Cowboys did with Micah coming out as a rookie. They didn't try to overwhelm him with the number of options that he does now, rather than like what he does with the Packers, where he's very much all over the field. But I think Arvell Reese in the right defense, in the right structure, could be amazing. Again, we haven't sat down to look at the mock yet, but I think he's looking at a place like the place that I look at and I go, "Ooh, that makes a ton of sense," is the New York Giants with John Harbaugh. He could be that new, similar to what Terrell Suggs was years ago for those Ravens defenses, is what Arvell Reese could be for the New York Giants.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I had a little squirrel moment there. Sorry.
Okay.
I heard a bing in my ear. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I know what it is now. So all is good. All right, well, let's move on to Kedrick Falk out of Auburn. Inside, outside threat, versatile defender who frequently kicks inside the play a defensive tackle 30.3% of the snaps, despite being a primary edge rusher. Again, going back to that defensive end or an edge. He had a regression a lot in 2025, while his sack total dropped to 2.0 in 2025 from 7.0 in 2024. His efficiency remained high when aligned with outside tackle, where he maintained 15.1% pressure rate. So he can stop the run. He has led all of FBS defenders in 62 stops in the last 3 seasons. That alone is going to earn him a job on the NFL. First round, I don't know that that's where he's at, but he's certainly going to get drafted on draft day.
Absolutely. I think he's going to go either the first round or the second round. If you'll notice, there is a noticeable exclusion from this spot versus what a lot of your pundits on ESPN and these other places are saying. And that is, this is the spot typically occupied by Reuben Bain. I have Reuben Bain knocked down substantially because his arm length at the combine was almost historically low. The thing that I like about Falk, and this is the thing, is you can kind of, again, you talk about the stats, there was a regression in his stats. The one stat that doesn't get pointed out enough with Falk is Falk actually received the highest percentage of double teams of any defensive lineman in all of college football. You don't see a lot of double teams in college because you don't, like, the offensive linemen aren't developed enough oftentimes to know how to kick out when they can be on a double team and when they need to release from somebody else to another, maybe a delayed linebacker blitz or things like that. They just don't have that recognition and recall yet. But Falk was double teamed more than any other defensive lineman in college football, which is why you go, yeah, okay, his stats are going to fall off. Do you know who else is double teamed more than anybody else in the NFL? Myles freaking Garrett. Every single year. And guess what? Double teams open up the ability for your teammates to go make a play. The problem that Falk had is he'd get double teamed, and he didn't have teammates that could go make a play. Because Auburn was kind of a hot mess this year. I personally love that inside-outside versatility. We saw that out of Derek Brown out of the Carolina Panthers the last 2 seasons, and he's been tremendous for the Panthers, really the guy that they have built their entire defense around. So because of that, Falk also gives you the ability that they could play him as either a 4-3 defensive end or for 3-4 squads. They could line him up on the inside as one of those. Think of this as I call it the Cameron Hayward position. Cameron Hayward coming out of Ohio State. They're like, is he an outside? Is he a defensive tackle? We don't really know. So what happened? The Steelers took him in the first round. They put him as a 3-4 defensive end, and the dude's going to go into the Hall of Fame as a 3-4 defensive end for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Absolutely.
And that's I look at Falk, and Falk is Cameron Hayward's comp, like to a T. If he just has that same, he has the same motor and the same work ethic.
Yeah, I agree. TJ Parker out of Clemson, though. Record-setting production. Parker broke Clemson's true freshman record for tackles for losses in 2023 and has continued to have a productive career with 21.5 career sacks. 2025 stats, he recorded 5 sacks, 9.5 TFLs, and a team-high 3 fumble recovery across 12 starts. Combined performance clocked at 4.68 second 40-yard dash with a 34-inch vertical and a 10-foot broad jump. Who is going to take Clemson? TJ Parker out of Clemson. Somebody is, and somebody is in the first round. I can't wait till we get to our mock draft. But go ahead. TJ Parker out of Clemson.
I like TJ Parker a lot. I talked about Kate Klubnik. I told you how, again, Clemson had some absolute studs this year. They were trying to build this roster on 4 or 5 superstars, and the rest of the roster just sucked. And TJ Parker, in my opinion, was the best defensive player they had. I know some people it kind of goes all over the board. They have a defensive lineman in Peter Woods, defensive tackle, and they had edge with TJ Parker, and they had Avion Terrell, who many say is the number 2 corner in this class. I like TJ Parker a lot. Again, similar to what we've seen from Arvell Reese, can attack the pass at any angle, and unlike Reese, that dude has seen tons of snaps. So he's seen offenses. He knows how to react. He may not have the pure explosion that Reese does, but I think TJ Parker is going to be an absolute stud for years to come. I think of him when I'm trying to think about a comp for TJ Parker. I was watching tape and I was asking my buddy Adam that I kind of run some of these things by, and the name that came to mind. Tom, do you remember when Willie McGinnis was in his prime for the New England Patriots?
Right.
And the dude just made winning freaking plays all the time. And especially like as a Colts fan, it sucked so much because he was just always in the right spot. And that's what I see out of TJ Parker. Again, when the rest of the roster around him was playing well, he was trying to cover up a lot of people's ills on the defensive side of the ball this year. And one man in the NFL in football can only do so much. That's what makes it the best sport, is because you have to be strong everywhere. You have to have everybody doing their job to win the game. It can't just be one guy goes and wrecks an entire game plan. So I like TJ Parker a lot. I think he's a really strong candidate at the back end of this first round. A team like the Seattle Seahawks that has lost, coming off that Super Bowl, they've lost a lot of talent. Teams like the Patriots. The Patriots are still working on putting together all of their playmakers, on following their run to the Super Bowl. So I look at him as a late first-round pick, but going to a team that has more players around him where he's coming in to fill a role. He could be a really strong candidate for the Philadelphia Eagles, having lost Nakobe Dean and having to replace some of their players. That's where I think would be a great slot for him. I actually feel like if we texted our buddy Ed and said, hey, I think I really like, if the Eagles are going to go defense, I really like TJ Parker. I think if he did his homework, I think he'd be really excited.
Oh, absolutely. I think you're absolutely. And he was going to jump on with this, but he does have a lot of stuff going on with the Eagles. And you know what? Just while we're doing that, I will text him that here in just a moment. But let's talk about Ruben Bain Jr. Out of Miami. Violent and high IQ, known for a violent and smart playing style. Bain is a 3-year starter who recorded 9.5 sacks, 15.5 TFLs, and is in the heavy 16-game 2025 season. His draft stock, however, is viewed as a power-based edge rusher who can affect all aspects of the game, including punts and field goals. Big game performer. He performed his best in top competition, recording 5.5 sacks in 5 games against ranked opponents in 2025. We kind of feel like his stock has fallen a little bit, but we still like Ruben Bain Jr.
Yep. Here's my thing on Ruben Bain. I don't dislike him as a prospect. I have him ranked 5th based off of what I think his potential development track and where I think he realistically should be ranked. This has nothing to do in this situation. This has very little to do with his tape outside of a handful of games. When he went up against Ohio State in that semifinal game, Austin Seyerveld, the Ohio State left tackle, was injured, and Ruben Bain feasted on him. Here's the game that made, I think, a lot of people raise their eyebrows. And then when he got to the combine, it was, oh, this could be a problem. And that was watching him go against all conference Big Ten lineman of the year, Carter Smith from IU in the national championship game. Tom, we both watched the national championship game. I can think of one play that Ruben Bain made an impact. Because Carter Smith swallowed him up the whole game. And here's the thing. Carter Smith and players of Carter Smith's size and length is who Bain's going to be going up against his entire career. The problem for Bain is he's not fast enough to be an edge style player, so an off the line edge rusher. But I just don't know if he's going to be able to get off blocks. Now, short arms have been overcome by other guys to have successful careers. Doesn't mean it's a death knell. I'm just looking at this going, crap, it's a much bigger risk than what we thought it was prior to his measurement. His measurement came in, I believe, at 30 and 1/8 inch. Traditional, the average is usually 32.5. And for frame of reference, that was the 3rd shortest for players expected to go in rounds 1 and 2 in the history of the NFL Combine.
Mm-hmm.
So you just go, is it something that he's going to be able to overcome? He could. But as I'm looking at the players that we have put ahead of him, even though he had some better production than several of them in college, or had an outstanding career, this has nothing to do with what he did in college. I'm looking at his pro potential, and I'm going like, if he would have been lined up against a Joe Thomas would just eat his lunch all freaking day.
Absolutely.
And that's my struggle with Ruben Bain is I don't know that he's gonna be able to get off blocks. And so then you go, okay, where can he make plays? If there's plays bounced to the outside, yeah, he can get off that block and get over and make the stop. But in the NFL, that is your lifeblood as a defensive end, is being able to get off blocks and get around to the quarterback. And I don't know that he's going to be able to do that.
We've been talking with Adam Jividen, super Browns fan, super Cavs fan, super Buckeyes fan, super Guardians fan, great prognosticator, great dad, and college football partner in crime. We are breaking down our big draft board. This is just part 1 of a few parts to go. Adam, where do we want to go next? What's the next episode going to highlight?
I would say normally we would do running backs, but this running back class is basically one dude and then a bunch of meh. So I would say the next major class on the offensive side of the ball, we'll do 1 offense and 1 defense. Tom, it's dealer's choice. These are both really good classes for tackles or wide receivers. What do you choose?
I am going to go wide receiver and defensive tackle.
Perfect. We'll do wide receiver, defensive tackle. Those are both really good positions.
Yeah, we'll talk about names like Omar Cooper, Jordan Tyson. We'll talk about names like Peter Woods, Caleb Banks, all of those on our big board. yet to come. I have texted Ed. He hasn't got back with me. I know he's got a lot going on with free agency and working with the Eagles, and he will be on with us closer to the draft. And we will have our official mock draft as well. So
Yes, sir.
stick and more to come for sure. But in the next installment of the big board of the draft, we got wide receivers and defensive tackles. You will not or do not want to miss part two. We're a Netflix like show, like episode one.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Do you
I
ever
think
do you ever
in this particular draft, we won't do just two position groups per, because like for example, safeties is a pretty shallow class. As I mentioned, running backs is a shallow class. Tight end is a little smaller. So there may be some weeks where we're able to do, two position groups aside or something like that. So we're not running this on for forever.
Absolutely. Well, we're gonna get it all down and broke down. Have you ever seen the show The Pit?
No, I don't have HBO Max, so
Shouldn't
I've
have.
heard
I watch
it's
it on.
really good.
I watch it on YouTube TV. At least the
Oh,
first season.
oh,
That's
well,
pretty good.
I don't know. It's
It's
there.
pretty
So
good.
there you go.
Yeah, there you go. You don't know what you're missing. How was your St. Patty's Day celebration yesterday?
That was fantastic. Fantastic. Father-in-law cooks he goes like a full Irish spread. We're talking corned beef, mashed
Love it.
potatoes, bangers and mash, soda bread, beer bread, like a Guinness rum, like cake. It's
Your
stupid good.
company should give you Tuesday off.
I could take it if I wanted to. The whole company takes off. Being in Ireland, they take off on Tuesday, and a lot of them take PTO on like Monday. I don't. I'm gonna work it because it's really quiet and it lets me get a lot of things done.
I my days. There was a time in my uh, past in my review life where St. Patty's Day was like the day, and we'd start early and end late. But these days, no.
Those days
Uh,
are firmly in the rearview
They are
mirror.
firmly in the rearview mirror. Adam, we appreciate you jumping on with us for this first installment of the Balance Big Board. Where's more to come as next installment next week will be wide receivers and defensive tackles. Any final words of wisdom for us, sir?
No, I mean brackets are dropping tonight, so we'll have some exciting things coming
It's
soon with the NCAA tourney.
we've got the balance brackets that'll be coming out tomorrow. So I already assumed you're going to jump in on it with us.
I
So
will, and I will probably suck like I do every year when it comes to my brackets. So it's just I fill out the brackets going like, okay, this is what like on paper makes sense, and it's usually obliterated by like first
yeah,
weekend.
I don't
So
think I'm going to go as crazy as I am. Usually with my prior employer, we did a bunch of different brackets. It doesn't look like that's going to happen with my current employer. So I'm going to do the balance one, and maybe just throw in a couple other ESPNs, some local people here that I know. But other than that, I'm probably not going to go as wild as I have in the past. So we will see. IndyCar is underway right now out in Texas, in the streets of Arlington, Texas. So that's going on right now, and we've got Kyle Kirkwood in the lead, Alex Palou, Will Power, Marcus Erickson, Pato Award, and David Malukas. Yesterday, NASCAR out in Vegas with the O'Reilly Parts NASCAR Series. Used to be the Xfinity Series. Kyle Larson took the checkered there. No reason to believe that he won't take the checkered again tonight. We look forward to talking with you guys next week. Thanks for joining us on a Sunday Drop. Adam, we appreciate you as always.
awesome.
And
Thanks for
I say,
having me.
where can people typically my exit when I'm talking to someone on the show? Hey, where can I find your working masterpieces? But your working masterpieces is right here on the Big Board Show.
Right here, and we can launch the big board out at post show and compare it and see. What I want to know is when we get the mock drafts, because this is going to be the thing that's hard. Is it's hard to do mock drafts because you also have trades, like especially like the last couple seasons. Our balance mock draft was actually closer to what actually happened than most of the national analysts. So,
that's right. There you go.
There
it is.
We know in what we handle it.
We know what we're pretty smart doing this sort of stuff. All right, buddy. We'll talk with you soon. You have a good weekend.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom.
All right, bye bye.